Good morning, guys. Today we're going to talk about passive sentences. I have made this video because I've seen that some of you have some problems with certain aspects of passive transformations. We are going to talk about active and passive structures. We're going to look at passive verb forms. We'll see the passive infinitive and the two structures that we can use to transform sentences with the transitive verbs or verbs with two objects into passives, and then passives in sentence transformation activities. I think this cartoon is very representative of what happens in passive and active structures. If you look at the picture, we could describe the situation with two different sentences. What's happening? Oh, Homer is strangling Bart. Or we could say, poor Bart, he's being strangled by Homer. In the first case, we're talking about active voice. Homer is strangling Bart. In this structure, we use an active verb form like is strangling because we want to say what people, in this case Homer, or things do. The subject is the agent of the action described by the verb. He is the doer. Who is strangling Bart? Homer. In the second example, Bart is being strangled by Homer. In this case, we use a passive verb form like is being strangled because we want to say what happens to people or things, that is, what is done to them. We are interested in the process, not in the agent. The subject is not the agent of the action described by the verb. It receives the action. This is the typical transformation of any active sentence into a passive one. The object of an active verb corresponds to the subject of a passive verb. Let's consider this example. Sir John Latton built this house in 1486. This house, the object of the active sentence, becomes the subject of the passive one. This house, and then I have to transform the verb into the passive. How do we transform a verb into the passive? Well, it's not difficult. The first question is, the verb in the active sentence is in what tense? In this case, we have built the past simple of the verb. So I have to write the verb to be in the same tense as the verb in the active one. That is built. If built is in the past simple, I have to write the verb to be in the past simple, so it was or were, depending on the subject. In this case, this house is singular, so I use was. And then I write the participle, was built. The verb that gives the meaning to the sentence in the passive sentences is always in the past participle. Then the subject of the active sentence, Sir John Latton, becomes the agent introduced by the preposition by. The agent always goes after the verb because otherwise the connection is lost. And finally, the other complement. So this house was built by Sir John Latton in 1486. What are the passive verb forms we may find in sentences in text everywhere? Okay, all of this. You can have a simple present, present progressive or present continuous, which is the same, simple past, past continuous or progressive, present perfect, past perfect, future with will, future perfect, going to. You don't have to memorize all these verb forms into the passive. You only have to understand the mechanics of the passive transformation. That is, for example, in the first one, the simple present. If the verb in the active sentence is in the simple present, I have to write the verb to be in the simple present. What is the simple present of the verb to be? are, or is, depending on the subject and the past participle. So if I say, we speak English here, in the passive would be English is spoken here. If I have a present progressive or present continuous, for example, they are painting the house, then I have to write the verb to be in the present continuous. The house is being painted. And the same with the rest of verbs, the past simple, the past continuous, the future. As you can see at the bottom of the chart, the future progressive passives and the perfect progressive passives are unusual in English. They are extremely formal. And you can also have examples of passive infinitives and examples of passive in ing forms that we are not going to study this year, but we will in the next. The third point of this video is to explain the passive infinitive. The passive infinitive is the term that some grammars use to refer to the passive of modal verbs. After the modal, we always have an infinitive. For example, look at this example. We can solve this problem. After the can, we have an infinitive without to, solve. So to transform the verb into the passive, we do the same. We write the modal. It could be in the present or in a modal perfect example, and then we do the same with the infinitive of to be. Be plus past participle or have been plus past participle if we're talking about a perfect modal. For example, we can solve this problem. This problem can be solved. The agent is always introduced by the preposition by, but it's not necessary when we use a personal pronoun or an indefinite article or adjective, for example, somebody, anybody. So you don't have to write it. So the sentence could be, this problem can be solved. In the second example, we have somebody should have cleaned the windows. We have a modal perfect. What is the modal perfect? Should have plus past participle. Then I have to use should have been and plus participle. The windows should have been cleaned. It's not difficult. Let's move on. We go now to those special type of passives that we can find with two objects, also called the transitive verbs. If we look at the picture, the fairy tale reads as follows. The witch offered Snow White an apple. There are two possible passives here. You can say, Snow White was offered an apple by the witch, or an apple was offered to Snow White by the witch. What is the explanation for these two possible structures? Many verbs such as give, send, show, lend, ask, teach, offer, entail, or pay can be followed by two objects. An indicted object that usually refers to a person, and a direct object which usually refers to a thing. You always say give something to somebody or give somebody something. Send something to somebody or send somebody something. So with these two structures, we have two possible passives. If we consider the example, she gave her sister a car for her birthday, the most common passive construction would be when the indicted object, that is the person, becomes the subject of the passive sentence. Her sister, I changed the verb, was given a car for her birthday, so the rest of the sentence stays the same, no changes. You only have to place the indicted object in the first position and change the verb, and the rest of the sentence stays the same. The second possibility is when the indicted object, that is the one that refers to a thing, becomes the subject of the passive sentence. A car was given to her sister for her birthday. In this case, the preposition to must be used before the indicted object. Otherwise, the transformation could be incorrect. So, which one is the easiest? Number one. But you have to learn both, because I am going to require that from you. So we will take a little test, and you will have to write the two possibilities for this type of passives. Well, that's all for now. I was going to talk also about something you have in your textbook, which is the transformation, sentence transformation, in which you can see passives. Let's see one moment. This is, for example, what you have in your textbook in the first one. Rewrite the sentences, use the words in bracket without changing the original meaning. So these sentence transformations you have here are all about passives. How do you know they are passives? Obviously, this unit is about passives, but you can also see that in the first example, you have rented, so you have a past participle, or you have a subject. They're going to charge us £100. Sorry, 100 euros. Some of them are the transitive verbs. So this is the activity you have to do for today. And I go back to my screen. That's it for now. I hope this video is helpful for you, and if you have any question, just let me know. Bye guys, stay safe.